Speaking of ranking quarterbacks here, Barry, let's get into your positional rankings. Of course, from a fantasy perspective, quarterbacks 1 through 10 right here. No surprise. We've talked about this before. Josh Allen slightly edges out Jalen Hurts. And then the rest of this list after that, I mean, Mahomes, Burrow, Lamar, no surprises there. Justin Fields making the top 10 after the rushing performance he put on last year. And obviously you're expecting a pretty big leap from Deshaun Watson after a rusty, shortened season last year.
I certainly am. So I just want to point out a couple of guys here. And I may swap, Fields and Herbert. That one I really struggled with. Same as well. I mean, Lamar, Herbert, and Fields, candidly, right? That 5, 6, 7 are all just sort of right there. Here's the argument for Lamar, and I know people are concerned about the injury history, which is fair, but at least 20 fantasy points per game in 3 of the last 4 seasons, 4 straight years with 750 rushing yards, and I'm excited about Todd Monken. I'm just excited about the creativity that I think he'll bring to this offense. Certainly they need to, OBJ needs to get healthy, Rashad Bateman needs to get healthy, but they've added some weapons for L-Jax this year. He's got the big contract. Herbert, yeah, I know a lot of people might be like, Herbert, really? Like, I get it. But last year, they finally added a deep threat for him as well. Last season, in what a lot of people thought was a down year for Herbert, he still was top 3 in both pass attempts and passing yards per game. And with Kellen Moore coming in to call the plays there, remember what Kellen Moore did in Dallas, even with conservative Mike McCarthy over him. Top 6 in points 3 of the last 4 seasons under Kellen Moore. I think that offense takes another step. And then you saw Trevor Lawrence down there at 8. 9 different games last year with at least 18 fantasy points. That was top 5 among all quarterbacks, top 10 in pass attempts per game. Another year in Peterson's system. Remember, they got Calvin Ridley back as well. So in addition to, they brought back Evan Ingram, they've got Christian Kirk, they've got Zay Jones, they've Travis Etienne, another year removed from his injury. So they've got all the weapons that were there last year, and then they add Calvin Ridley, again, second year in the system, and felt like, forget fantasy for a second, from a pure football standpoint, it felt like second half of the year, the light clicked on for Trevor Lawrence, and he was just like, okay, now I get what it means to be in the NFL and be a guy that's just like, get on my back, we're going down on this drive, we're going to win the game.
Yep.
Being that guy.
He went from mediocre or below average to like fringe MVP candidate level production in the second half of the season. Want to read you a stat line, Matthew, Connor?
Please.
4,823 passing yards, 70% completion rate, 112 QB rating, 33-7 touchdown interception ratio, and then another 444 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns, and the 5th best quarterback in fantasy. That's what Deshaun Watson did in his last full season, and there is a chance that he comes out and is just a top 3, top 5 quarterback in football. I think that when talking about quarterbacks with upside, I think the guys who have the biggest deltas, the biggest kind of range between best and worst outcomes, it's Deshaun Watson and Justin Fields. Those are the 2 guys, because Fields could just be the best guy like we were talking about. He could also just not break off 70-yard touchdown runs for fun. And then Deshaun Watson, he was pretty bad last season, but he also could be, he's never going to win an MVP in this league, I don't think, but he could put up that kind of production.
The thing on Watson is, to your point about range of outcomes, absolutely. He's a guy that was a fantasy superstar in Houston. There's no question about it, and there's weapons there in Cleveland, right? And so we both like Cedric Tillman. I don't like him as much as you do. I like him, and I don't like him as much as you do. I know you're all in on Cedric Tillman.
Absolutely.
Right? And they have Amari Cooper. And David Njoku kind of had a breakout year last year as well. The concerns are, when he was putting up massive fantasy numbers in Houston, bad defense, crazy shootouts, controlled environment, right? They played half their games in a dome inside. Man, those November games in Cleveland when the wind's whipping around, they're brutal. And so that's the concern. It's a tougher division as well. Whether it's the Bengals, the Steelers, or the Ravens, every single one of those, forget record, they're all going to be knockdown, drag-out defensive fights. So those are the concerns on Deshaun Watson. But the skill set is there, and we expect the offensive scheme there to be there where he could put up easy top 5 fantasy numbers.
I thought Stefanski won Coach of the Year in the past 3 years. Also, they've got a top 3 offensive line in football. They have weapons, and also they have a running game that Deshaun Watson, I don't think, ever had really in Houston. So, it is all there.
And he's pretty good on play action, too.
Yes. Yeah, he could have a monster season.
You wisely had Trevor Lawrence in the top 10, sitting there at 8. Trevor Lawrence is watching the quarterback rankings. Kyle Brandt, in his quarterback rankings, had Lawrence all the way down there in tier 6. And Trevor Lawrence's response to that was, the game ain't played on paper.
It's fair.
Well, fantasy football literally is.
Fantasy football, though, Trevor Lawrence is.
Yeah, it is.
And that's why Barry
played
values
on paper.
you.
Yeah,
That's
played
the
on
top 8
paper.
quarterback.
Played on your phone. Played on the computer. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.